Hello there, I'm Billy Byrne, a captain of the United Irishmen, the rebels who fought for our freedom against Britain in 1798. I was born in 1775 and raised here in Wicklow as the youngest member of my family. I had 5 brothers and 2 sisters, and we lived in a place called Ballymanus House out near Auckram. I suppose you could say I came from wealth, but quite an uncommon thing at the time considering we were a Catholic family. Most of the land around here was owned by Protestant families, like the Fitzwilliams, so it was peculiar to say the least that my father Gareth owned land. I was always very outgoing and got on well with most, so I spent a lot of time as a young adult out socialising. Ladies in particular I seemed to be very popular with. Perhaps it was my height, 6 foot 6 inches, that attracted them. I'll be honest, I was supposed to join a private army, quite a common thing during these years. I was supposed to join the Yeoman, a private regiment based in Tinnahealy, but I was told I would have to swear an oath of loyalty to the King of England, and as a proud Irishman, I wasn't willing to do. And the way the Yeoman operate is, if you aren't with them, you had to be against them. The Yeomanry of Tinnahealy burned down and destroyed my home, Ballymanus House. This turned me totally against them, which is why I joined the United Irishmen, which my brother Gareth was already a member of. In this group, it didn't matter what your religion was. The United Irishmen brought proud natives together to fight back against Britain and take back what was rightfully ours. I fought at many battles in Wicklow with the rebellion, such as the famous clash in the Battle of Arklow and the final encounter at the Battle of Vinegar Hill in Wexford. Now, I wasn't injured or anything, but we lost this battle, and soon the war was over. Many rebels fled to the Wicklow Mountains to fight alongside Michael Dwyer. I thought my best chance was to move up to Dublin with my 2 sisters, who had become very high in society up there. They had made a good friend called Lord Cornwallis, who, at the time, was Lord Deputy of Ireland. Eventually, I was arrested in Dublin in 1799, as was my brother Gareth. However, we met much different fates. Despite Gareth being a more senior and important leader, he was sent off and deported to Germany to join the German army. For some unknown reason, I was sent back to Wicklow, where I was put in the Wicklow jail. Because I retained much of my wealth, I was able to bribe the jailers and the guards, so my experience in the jail was a little different than the normal. My cell door was always open, never locked, and I wandered around as if I owned the place a lot of the time. Sure, I couldn't go outside the confines of the walls, but I had free run of the prison, so much so that many of my lady friends were allowed to visit me. One day, a prisoner inspector came. I decided to give him a tour. He presumed I was the jail's governor because of how well dressed I was, until I brought him to my cell and said this was where I stayed. He wasn't impressed, to say the least. The reason I was always relaxed during my time in jail was because I was confident I'd never be executed. I was convinced my sisters would be able to influence their good friend Lord Cornwallis to grant me a reprieve. When my trial took place in the jail itself, I was found guilty of being a leader of the United Irishmen. They sentenced me to death, but even this didn't faze me. My execution wasn't to be carried out for a number of weeks, and during this time I was as laid back as ever. The morning of my execution, I still thought I'd be granted my reprieve. I was convinced word would come down from Dublin, so I treated it like any other day. I was in the middle of a game of handball in the jail when the jailers came to look for me. I thought they'd tell me to go free, but it turned out I had it all wrong. I had underestimated the Orange Order influence in Wicklow. There was a pressure put on to make an example of some of the 1798 rebellion leaders. And unfortunately, I was to be made one of the examples, despite being a minor leader. They decided I was not to be hanged in front of the jail, but to be marched through the main street and brought to a place called Gallows Lane, up where Rocky Road now sits. They wheeled me down in an open cart in front of the entire town where they had gathered. A man by the name of Murphy in the crowd was playing Republican music as a way to jeer the local British militia. So they decided to grab him from the crowd and force him, a local Republican, to be my executioner. And rumour has it, a week after my execution, the reprieve was brought to Wicklow jail by way of messenger from Dublin. It's unknown whether Lord Cornwallis deliberately held on to my reprieve, but alas, it was too late. At the age of 24, I was hanged in front of my peers and temporarily buried in the Church of Ireland graveyard. And then I was moved to my permanent resting place in my family graveyard where Ballymanus House once stood. The monument you stand in front of was built at the end of 1900. And although you may see me as the pike man atop this beautiful monument, it's not just in memory of my efforts. This is a memorial for all that we fought for, this beautiful country, and in memory of the many other 1798 rebellion heroes and the other fights for Irish freedom.